Welcome, everybody. It is time for Cafe Better Sport. And, well, it's huge. Let's put it like that. Champions League. To get to a final is massive. And you can't get ahead of yourself, as I'm sure Adriano will be telling us. First of all, you've got to win the semi. In the back of my mind, I wonder if Pep the other day wasn't starting to think about Bayern a bit too soon. There were a lot of people, some experts that I value their input, saying, what about the starting lineup? But anyway, we're going to pick this man, Adriano's brain. It's great for me to have him, and he really is a fountain of information. More importantly, of course, he's on the ground. So he's seen it all in Portugal, reporting there. Adriano, welcome to Cafe Better Sport.
Thank you for having me, Neil. Looking forward to talking semi-finals here in the Champions League, and it's exciting feel here in Lisbon ahead of the Final Four of the competition.
Well, let's talk about tonight's game, the Tuesday game. We've got Leipzig versus PSG, and it's a fascinating contest because PSG will go off favourites. But if you look, perhaps, and you'd know about this because how many goals Atalanta have scored, they are perhaps a little bit fortunate to be in the semi-final. They turned it around, literally 2 goals in injury time.
Well, they were fortunate given the circumstances. Of course, Atalanta led 1-0 up until the 90th minute and then 2 goals in stoppage time. It was heartbreaking for Atalanta. Obviously, their fairy tale season did dramatically come to an end, but a wonderful performance nevertheless. But in the end, the class of Paris Saint-Germain prevailed. They did make the most, though, of a 10-man Atalanta in the closing stages, or perhaps a 10.5-man Atalanta, because Freuler for Atalanta was hobbling around on one leg for the last 5 or 6 minutes of normal time. He had very clearly injured a hamstring and was just trying to get through those last moments. Obviously, Gasperini had already made all 5 substitutions. They were desperately waiting for stoppage time and obviously get through to extra time in order to make a 6th sub, but wasn't to be. But to credit Paris Saint-Germain, they did maintain their heads. They maintained their commitment and dedication to the task at hand, and they scored 2, deserved goals in the end. They were attacking down that left wing. Kylian Mbappe was the difference off the bench. And look, with some players set to return for the semi-final against Leipzig, they're odds-on favourites for me to go through to what will be a first ever UEFA Champions League final.
Yeah, and in so doing, representing France, taking on the German representatives. And we touched on this yesterday when we spoke about perhaps the fact that the French league was the first to call it a day, close up shop, and therefore all these players got rest. And from a German perspective is that the Bundesliga completed early and they might well be rested. But if you look at Leipzig, I look back because, as you know, I'm a long-suffering Tottenham fan. And at the time, them getting beaten over the 2 legs by Leipzig was a bitter disappointment, particularly because they lost 4-0 over the 2 legs. Having said that, perhaps Leipzig's performances going further in the tournament gives some indication that it wasn't necessarily a flash in the pan. And the English clubs, we could make a case out for Liverpool maybe having a bad night. But by and large, the English clubs have huffed and puffed in this tournament again. Manchester United, likewise, of course, knocked out in Europa. But Manchester City, we know, we'll talk about that tomorrow night, beaten by Lyon. But all of Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea were thumped 7-1 on aggregate, although they've done better than Barcelona perhaps did, if you compare that. But what's going on there? Is there a power shift in Europe away from Spain and certainly away from England?
Look, it's a very complex discussion and many have different points of view on this topic. But the way that I see it is that Spain have been the dominant force in Europe this century. The numbers back that up. 10 of the last 20 Champions League titles, 8 of the last 14 Europa League titles as well. There's no doubt about the fact that the English Premier League is the most demanding. Physically, it's the most competitive. And obviously, over the last decade, we've seen different winners in that competition, which has made it a great spectacle. Conversely, of course, the likes of Bayern, Paris Saint-Germain, Juventus dominating their respective competitions, and Barca, Madrid, and Atleti once, of course, in Spain. But I think when we shift the focus to Europe, what makes this season particularly so disappointing for English football is that there was that break. There was the opportunity for them to really recharge the batteries and focus on a Champions League assault. But of course, Liverpool were already eliminated somewhat unfortunately, but Atleti in the end, just too good. Chelsea, well, it was always tough against the team that I feel are the best in the world in Bayern Munich, and still for me comfortably the favourites to win the Champions League. But obviously Manchester City, what they did against Lyon will be the big mark against the English clubs in Europe this season. And look, for Tottenham against Leipzig, well, as you touched on, Leipzig have proven that they are more than capable. So perhaps not a shock after all. And Leipzig, an incredible story, of course, for a club that were founded only 11 years ago. I've spoken to a number of people involved with that club here in Lisbon. And well, the one thing that they keep raving on about is their development system and what they've been able to do in terms of produce players, which has been well documented, of course. They're not a club who've come in with big money and purchased big name stars. They've really developed from the ground up, brought in players who they feel will fit into their philosophy and direction. And as a result, they're reaping the rewards. And well, they are incredibly one game away from a first ever Champions League final.
I don't know whether it was you that tweeted, Adriano, but somebody certainly did, saying it's the first time ever that the club is younger than the manager. And it's a fairly young situation for sure. Is there, if you're Leipzig, right, and you know the PSG, I spoke to Terry Paine, as I do every day, and we'll have a look at Terry's corner in a moment with his no pain, no gain selection. But he is saying to me that as much as he respects Leipzig, and you can't take anybody likely they're through to a semi-final, he just thinks that man for man, the PSG will have too much pace, too much power, and too much flair, and dare one say talent for Leipzig. So if you are Leipzig and you believe that, how do you go about doing that? Because this is the age-old debate. Do you try and go toe-for-toe with PSG, or do you try and do the old Jose Mourinho and park the bus and hope you get lucky?
To be honest, I'll be very surprised if Nagelsmann and Leipzig go away from what we saw against Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid are more than capable in Europe. They've been in, well, 3 finals in their history, 2 this over the last decade. They won't go away from what we've seen them do, because that's helped them win football matches. And that's what helped them finish in the top 4 again in the Bundesliga. That's what's helped them get to a semi-final stage of this competition. And they also would have rewatched the Atalanta clash against Paris Saint-Germain very closely. And again, do keep in mind, Atalanta matched Paris Saint-Germain for 90 minutes. It was solely stoppage time where it was the difference. The one thing that I do feel PSG do have in their favour, without a shadow of a doubt, is the returning Angel Di Maria, who will return from suspension. Kylian Mbappe, still no confirmation whether he starts, but obviously he will be fitter and better for his 30-minute cameo against Atalanta. So I do feel, though, at full strength, PSG will be just too hard to beat for Leipzig in this one. But they have absolutely nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. This will be a phenomenal run, irrespective of what happens. And I think they will just play their normal game and give it their best shot. And look, I won't be surprised if they get on the score sheet and do push Paris Saint-Germain all the way, as we saw Atalanta do. But I think ultimately, in the end, it will be PSG going through to the final.
Okay, well, it sounds like I'm talking to Terry, because he said exactly the same with the changes and the freshness coming on. So no pain, no gain. Let's see if they agree on a scoreline, shall we? Because Terry did give me the scoreline that he thought would happen, and here it is. I'm going to move this block, but we're down here. So Leipzig versus PSG, and Terry is in agreement with you that PSG probably going to be too comfortable. I don't know, Adriano, if you want to have a guess if you think Terry's in the right ballpark there. He does see Leipzig getting on the score sheet. He's gone 1-3 to PSG. PSG obviously to progress in 90 minutes. You think he's in the right ballpark, Dr. Paine?
I laughed as soon as you brought that up, because 3-1 is also my prediction for this match. I think Leipzig will get on the score sheet. I do not feel that Paris Saint-Germain defensively are the best side in the world. So I certainly think there'll be a way through for Leipzig. They will get their chances, and ultimately, whether or not they do progress, they will need to take those 1 or 2 chances that do come about. So I agree with the 3-1. I think PSG certainly to win in 90 minutes would be my tip for the match, just to play it nice and safe. But yeah, as I said, ultimately, I think PSG will be going through to the final.
Okay, before I come off this page, somebody contacted me yesterday and said, what's going on with Terry over here? I put those things. He said, it looks like it's a hearse. And I can confirm that was a hearse. Terry and I were playing golf the one day. We came to a hole, believe it or not, it was sponsored by a funeral directorship. And Terry said, "Matey, you've got to have a photo of me next to the hearse." So fortunately, that is Terry next to the hearse, but not in it. So there's some lovely photographs there. But yeah, well spotted. Somebody who says, "Is that Terry in a funeral parlour?" It's something close to that. Well, it could be a funeral parlour. It certainly has been a funeral parlour for English clubs. Tomorrow, we'll touch on where Spain is at, if you don't mind, Adriano, because that brings up a whole set of question marks as well. And where does Ronaldo go? Where do Messi go? Because you were talking about Spain dominating this century, and they have done. But that's a lot to do with those two men, Lionel Messi and Real Madrid, of course, when Ronaldo was there. So we can have a conversation about that. But those two have driven European football. And of course, age catches up with everybody. And I suspect the next 10 years, we're going to look for new superstars.
No doubt about that. This season is actually the first season since 2004-05. Of course, that was the famous Liverpool-Milan final, that we haven't seen a team with Ronaldo or Messi in the semi-finals of the competition. So perhaps, yes, now a changing of the guard, the futures of Ronaldo and Messi both up in the air. Of course, Ronaldo still 2 years left on his Juventus contract. Lionel Messi with 1 season left at Barcelona on their current deals. But I wouldn't be surprised if both are to move on. But yeah, we can certainly discuss that in more depth tomorrow.
Okay, so there it is. Terry Paine, Adriano Del Monte in agreement. The safe bet is PSG to get through. But if you're looking to be spot on with the score, 1-3, say the experts. Thanks for joining us. And Adriano, we'll catch you up tomorrow with the second semi-final on Wednesday.
Looking forward to it.